Welcome to our webinar, Navigating Interoperability Standards, Collaborating to Meet Existing Standards and to Define New Ones. Hosted by IMS Global, we're planning a great discussion today with our expert panelists. So let's get to some introductions. My name is Dedic. I'm a Vice President of Student Solutions for PowerSchool. I've held numerous positions within PowerSchool for the past 18 years. I started as a solution engineer. Previously, as a technology director in Michigan, I implemented PowerSchool and worked to champion many standards as possible to streamline our district technology ecosystem. And I'm excited to be here today to discuss interoperability standards and connect with amazing panelists that I'd like to introduce you to now. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Brian Blanton, Chief Information Officer for Henry County Schools in Georgia. Brian serves as the member of Superintendent Executive Cabinet and leads the Information Technology Division. Prior to his role as CIO, he served as the district's instructional technology leader. He's the co-creator and co-founder of the district's blended and virtual learning school, Impact Academy, which is now home to over 4,000 full-time students. Brian is also an active leader in Georgia's educational technology community and serves as board president for the Georgia Educational Technology Consortium. On the national level, Brian is a contributing member of the IMS Global Learning Consortium and is director of the IMS K-12 Institutional Board of Directors. He is honored to have been recognized by IMS as the K-12 Leadership Award recipient. Thank you for joining us today, Brian. I'd also like to introduce Kimberly Jackson, Executive Director of Instructional Technology, also from Henry County Schools in Georgia. Kimberly serves as a member of several superintendents' cabinets, including leadership, accountability, and instructional cabinets. She leads the instructional technology, data accountability, student information services, and information service departments within the Information Services Division. She is also a member of the IMS Global Learning Consortium and COSIN. Prior to her current role, she served as Professional Learning Coordinator and the Middle School Assistant Principal. Thank you again for joining, Kimberly. Next, we have Dr. Tim Clark. He's the Vice President of K-12 Programs at IMS Global. In his role, Tim assists schools and districts in the adoption of IMS standards and practices to enable interoperability standards learning ecosystem. He also provides strategic leadership for K-12 in IMS Global collaboration with K-12 institutional and State Department education members of the consortium. Formerly, Tim served as the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Digital Learning for Chicago Public Schools, where he provided leadership and guidance for teaching and learning through the design and implementation of equitable district-wide digital curriculum. Tim also served as a coordinator of instructional technology for Forsyth County Schools in Georgia. He's been an educator for 25 years and has taught at all grade levels, ESL, and gifted learners. Thanks, Tim, for joining. Appreciate it. We also have Carrie Vail, Senior Director of Product Management at PowerSchool. She brings 20 years of developing edtech solutions spanning K-12, higher ed, and corporate training for both publishing and platform applications. After 12 years at Pearson, creating technologies to support the higher educational, international, professional, and K-12 divisions, Carrie moved on to focus her efforts on how video can fully be leveraged for effective instruction and engagement at Vidler. More recently, she returned to K-12 at Schoology to build out curriculum capabilities within their LMS. Now Carrie is working across the entire PowerSchool portfolio to bring educational products together to support district and educational ecosystem. Thank you, Carrie, for joining. So with these great panelists, let's get into our discussion. So I want to start with Brian. Brian, what led you to get started using interoperability standards?
Thanks, Ed. Really, it was about the user experience. Our users' experience when it came to instructional resources was far from what we desired for them and far from what our teachers and students deserve. In my former role, I was our instructional technology leader, so I was well aware and painfully aware of what we were solving for when I stepped into this role as Chief Information Officer. And as one of my first steps in this role, I recruited Kimberly, who's on the screen, and who was our professional development coordinator here in the district, because she also knew well what we were solving for in many, really from many perspectives, but specifically around this user experience and interoperability to get to that user experience. So we began using these standards really to solve for that user experience. We lacked instructional resources at the time. This led to our district in schools having acquired scores of supplemental resources. A combination of purchase content, freeware, freemium, content, and all of this was disconnected and lacked really either the ability to interoperate, or maybe some of these were standards-based platforms and resources, but at that time we had no strong strategy or plan for how to get these things to talk together to improve the user experience. So really, we found ourselves with way too many logins and sign-ons for users. They were located in far too many places. Folks were having to go, to different places to get to different platforms. And really, we developed what we talk about as platform fatigue. And so we also had poor user data, no real way to pull analytics on what folks were using. And as CIO, I'm also our chief privacy officer for the district. So I have strong concerns around student data privacy. So really, we got started using these standards for, some and all of those reasons. And we began looking around what other districts around the country were doing. And so I was talking with folks like Tim, who's now the K-12 leader for IMS Global, but at the time was a district leader in the nation's second largest school district, and was doing phenomenal work around standards and really solving for that user experience and equity and some of the things that Kimberly and I care so much about. Darlene in KDISD, Barbara in South Carolina. Really, we were just looking at what the people that seemed to be solving for these problems, how they were, the ones who were doing that well, all tended to be using these interoperability standards. So that's really what got us started. And Kim, I'll kick it over to you in case you have a little bit more to add to that.
Well, I think you just about covered it. The only thing I wanted to kind of expand upon is coming out of a middle school and also being in professional learning. One of those things that you always heard is, like Brian was saying, is that ease of use and having to go to multiple platforms in order to get what you need when you need it. Also, parents being able to see the resources that our students were using. And the big one that stuck out for me as I transitioned over to information services is that ability to be day one ready. I remember our first year in this role, this new role, and having all these different platforms to get up and running for the first day of school. Or if we acquired some newly acquired resource and we wanted to get out to all of our buildings quickly, there was no quickly back then. And with interoperability, we have that ability to be day one ready access, right when, get what we need when we need it. Again, that ease of use, teachers being able to get their hands on the data, where I go back in my memory of thinking about when teachers had to pull various spreadsheets and they were compiling data, or they were writing it on sheets. But now with this interoperability, all these different platforms talk to one another in a way that is formatted so the teacher is at a click of a button or a dashboard to be able to get those. And kind of like Brian also said, that single sign-on was amazing. I think that was our first clear win with interoperability.
Great. Tim, do you have anything to add there from your history? I mean, you've got a vast history with working in Chicago and other places. There had to be a ton of interconnectivity required.
Sure. Just a lot of the experiences that I've seen is that it really helps that, as Brian was saying, that ease of use and thinking about how do you provide professional learning for all of the teachers in a school district, in a large district like Chicago, where I was. How do you make it easy for students and for parents to be able to participate in digital learning and really have a seamless user experience? And the standards really make that ecosystem stick together. Those are like the glue that make the ecosystem stick together, so that you can have the ease of use and and provide professional learning at scale to every teacher. And that's, I think, the key. You don't want the technology to be in the way. You want it actually to help facilitate what normally should go on in the classroom and to support teaching and learning. And I think that is what happens with the use of standards that support interoperability.
That's great. That's great. So I want to go to question 2 here, and Kimberly and Brian, you expanded upon this a little bit, but what benefits do you see your staff and students when these systems are fully integrated?
I see the first thing is time. That time back for instruction, not time spent trying to manipulate data from different sources, or time wasted with teachers or students trying to log into various platforms. And again, that day one ready access to everything when you need it. So for me, the greatest thing from all of this was that instructional time that we won back.
I fully agree with all of that. I mean, for us, Ed, it's really a multiple year strategy. So this is an ongoing integration in an ever-growing ecosystem that we have envisioned. So fully integrated for us is really kind of ongoing integration for a while. But really see the benefits for students and staff being, in addition to what Kim's saying, is a one-stop shop experience, one location to go to get to everything. Tim mentioned a little while ago teacher professional development. So now in this ecosystem, we are plugging in, any teacher professional development or any staff training or professional development experience, really kind of launching from the same one-stop shop that our teachers are using to get to their core instructional resources, their really intervention resources, their supplemental resources, and really all of the resources they need at their fingertips. So we've built into our system what we call our learning progressions. And in those learning progressions, then we see a teacher can pull up their standards. Actually, these learning progressions are based on standards by unit. So those standards are built in case format. So really, from one location, a teacher or a student, or eventually, as we continue our development, parents really having everything they have in one location. And then additionally, I think for us, and specifically for our families and our students, is one of the benefits is greater data privacy, getting a handle on data privacy, in addition to FERPA and really all of the federal data privacy regulation that we all really have to comply to. In Georgia, we have the Georgia Student Privacy, Accessibility, and Transparency Act that was really signed into legislation, into law in 2015, and about 7 laws roll up into that act, and that makes FERPA a little more specific. And so really a lot of focus on our roles and our responsibilities related to data privacy, and we think full integration gives us a better handle around all of that.
Probably saving IT as well, just a lot of time, effort, and dollars when you think about all they've got to integrate or keep safe when we can rely on those standards.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim has folks on her team that were devoted to really just in, really enrollment into these platforms. And so really when somebody's not spending all of their time getting students rostered in because of the one roster standard, which provides a lot of benefit beyond just the rostering, then that's time for that data professional to be able to work on other things, and our plates stay pretty full of those things, don't they, Kim?
Yes, they do. It's all about being able to kind of leverage behind the scene. I call this Oz behind the scene, but my brain initially went to that time brought back into the classroom with instruction. But you're definitely right about the time saved on our side in technology.
One of the things that I've seen is, we start with single sign-on. That is obviously giving time back a lot. We talked about that in the first two questions. Second is that data movement, whether it be one roster or any of the IMS global standards where we can incorporate that. And I think the next phase is actually giving time back, is that user experience, so that they're not navigating. It's one thing to get single sign-on, it's one thing to get the data. The next is the user experience as well, to incorporate that. So looking forward to how we're going to tackle that. And maybe Carrie, you can chime in on that, because I know that those are things that near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing, I mean, once we get past those access hurdles, that we really start to open some doors with interoperability around those learning standards and the case standards, where we can create a much more personalized experience. So not only do they have access, they're getting the right content for them, the right instructional content and support, whether that's the student or the staff member, getting them what they need when they need it in order to meet their learning objectives.
Great. So on the same theme, Kimberly and Brian, being practitioners in the district, how does interoperability support your digital equity goals?
So, for Henry, we have just launched down the path of a 5-year strategic plan, and the primary focus of that plan is our lens on equity. And so, of course, that goes far beyond digital equity, but certainly digital equity also. And so really that focus is around opportunities, access, and outcomes. And our policy, IAB, which is our policy that specifically calls out equity, really specifically calls out advancing equity through the development and design of these opportunities, access and outcomes for all students and all schools. And in order to be able to deliver on that commitment to our community, to our students and our families, we really had to create and solve for some issues that we saw, and then create those opportunities, provide that access. We went from really schools having a great variety of resources from school to school. So one school may be well funded with digital platforms, and another less so. And we lacked a core instructional resource. It really kind of started there. In this interoperability work, it's not just Kimberly and Brian and our teams, but we have a close partnership with what we call our learning and performance division. So that's our instructional counterparts and our assessment counterparts. And so we're at the table, both Kim and I, with regularity at the table with our counterparts, and then deeper into the organization to solve for really all of our user experience when it comes to the opportunities available and the access to what they need, that we're doing that together. So really began solving for that core instructional resource that we can provide to every school and to every student, which required us to then have a resource that would interoperate with our student information system, that would interoperate with our assessment system, with our learning object repository. And that's where these standards are essential. And so we're really began the hard work of making all of that happen behind the scenes, so that for the user experience, every user, no matter whether they were a title school and perhaps had some dollars that other schools didn't have or not, that every school and every student had access to a core set of instructional resources that were going to be the focus of the school district.
That's great. Kimberly?
So that was wonderful. The one thing I was going to just add to that, I know we are talking about our core instructional resources, but I even go back to some of the efficiencies with our interoperability standards, being able to use it and leverage it with our inventory management systems. I mean, we were able to expand into areas that we didn't even recognize that this would help us in. So with our one-to-one initiative and making sure that every child had a learning device, we were able to leverage those, our one roster into our inventory system so that we can make sure that every child has a device at every moment of the day, whether it was being checked out for repair and they were given another one. So this really is almost was like a mustard seed. It started very small and it has really grown to all facets of our organization. And I think about that when I think about equity, because that's part of it, making sure they have those devices, making sure they have their resources as well.
Yeah, and Kim did a phenomenal job of recruiting the leadership from our providing partner for that ticketing system into the IMS conversation, the standards-based conversation, so that they then began looking at interoperability standards. So that didn't just, we didn't just plug into the existing certified standards that they were already operating from. Kim really drove that and made that happen.
Yeah, I don't think vendors could do what they do without the push and the nudge and the insight that is provided by the folks that are living this and breathing this every day, right? So I've been at PowerSchool 18 years, so I bring my history of where we were 18 years ago. But we need to take a look at where we are today, and we are so far advanced in standards and what we can do with technology today. There's things we can do with technology and coding that we could never dream of, just 5 years ago, right? So standards is playing a huge role in how we can actually deploy and the speed at which we can deploy. So I'm really thankful for where we are thus far. And being able to provide those digital equity goals. Who would have thought prior to the last few years here that we would be in a one-to-one situation in most of our districts today, right? It's a dream that we all had, that I had way back when I was in the district, but never even fathomed that we could get it done to this point. So I'm going to turn to Carrie and ask, how can edtech vendors work together with K-12 districts to co-develop standard-based solutions? Speaking in concert with what we just heard, help us with how we as an edtech vendor can work together with districts.
I think the example that Kimberly just brought up, one roster was a specification that was developed to solve a specific problem, getting users, students in particular, from the student information systems into rostering them into their LMS or other products where you needed to maintain that association of their class and other information about who they are as a student and what they need access to. And you were able to extend it and use it in additional use cases. So for inventory, I've heard that it's been used for, transportation, figuring out busing schedules and that sort of thing, and just much more than the original problem that it was intended to solve. But we wouldn't know that unless we were having this conversation. It's that back and forth of what are those problems and where can the interoperability specifications help districts solve those problems. One of the things that I like to try and point out, because we always think of an integration as just a two-sided thing. There's, a product or a vendor on one side and a product or a vendor on the other side, and they integrate and everybody's happy. But it's really more of a three-legged stool, because it's not just about that point-to-point integration. It's about how it's being used by the customer and how we interact with it. And we really need inputs from all three dimensions in order to create a solution that's going to be effective and it's really going to solve needs for everybody involved. So I think there's just a lot of opportunities. I love that over the past year, we've seen a huge growth in participation from both districts and from states, because we get to have that perspective in the IMS project working groups that I'm in and the product steering committees, getting that direct feedback and engagement as we're working to solve these problems through the specifications. It's really valuable to have everyone involved.
Brian, can you expand on that? I mean, there's things that you've probably done within your role in the district to help companies and vendors provide enhancements and align with standards and other things. Can you share some of your experience there?
Yeah, certainly can, Ed. Our digital ecosystem, we've branded as Henry Connects. And really, this is a co-developed standards-based solution. So it's not one vendor product, it's many, and some of those are major systems. And so, it's really our core publisher content and resources, as well as supplemental resources. It's our learning object repository. It's our student information system and assessment platform. And so I think really we have to begin by making sure that if they want to play in the Henry Connects environment and do business with Henry County schools, then they're going to have to be certified on these standards. Yeah. But that's just the beginning, right? That's just scratching the surface. Then it becomes a partnership, really. I think with our providers, that we don't see them as a vendor, but as a partner in the work. And then we're really pulling our chairs up to the table and rolling up our sleeves and solving the problems that Carrie referenced there in the working groups that folks in the IMS working groups are struggling with. We're doing this in practical application. And so really, our learning object repository, the technical team there, the leadership there, really have been great partners in helping us with integrations. Our information system is an active part of the IMS community. Their VP of product is the chair of one of the technical working groups there at the assessment platform. And then so sometimes it's not just this being certified on the standard, but being able to get with us at the table and figure out how to make that work. Our core content is one of the three major publishers in this country, but we know the technical leadership on a first name basis. They've been great partners in the work. It's not always clean. It's sometimes a little bit messy, but I think that's an important part. And I think, maybe I jumped ahead a bit. I think if the questions around how, really edtech vendors and districts co-develop these standard-based solutions, I think it really starts with the community. And that we all work together by being part of this standards-based community. And so it's not just a membership, but active participation. For some, that's the more technical development on the, really some of those working groups that Carrie talked about. For others like me, it's helping to make other districts aware and ensuring that our providers are aware. I bragged on Kim and her ability to pull providers to the table and really probably undersold my role there a little bit, because I'm also very active in making sure that we have these partners to the table. And as Carrie pointed out, this is an exponentially growing community. So I think it really kind of starts there, but then also, once you get folks that, really in the community, then it's about active engagement and solving for these hard, messy, sometimes technical problems.
Brian, expand upon a little bit about how you get our strategic partners to work together to solve problems. That to me is the power of this membership. It's not you're just relying on one partner, but sometimes you have to bring multiple partners together.
Yeah, good point, Kim. So we do have to, sometimes get our folks that may sometimes even see themselves as competitors in a marketplace to say, well, you're our partner and you're our partner, so you're going to have to be partners together too. And you'd be surprised at the willingness that folks have around that our providers in this IMS community, folks really do. I think the people at the table there certainly, when they get to an event, recognize that this is interdependent. These groups really come together. Some even we have seen a change in product strategy. They realize, oh, really, that probably needs to be that company in that segment of the industry's lane, and our fit is here, and it's a better business strategy for us to figure that out. And I think this community allows for companies really to even begin to realize and figure out their product strategy in a more powerful way.
Yeah, I think that's one of the real benefits of IMS is it provides a forum for even, friendly competitors to be working together alongside customers so that, at the end of the day, the ones that really benefit are the students.
That's right. Yep.
Tim, I'm curious if you
Yeah.
have any more to add with what you've seen last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that what we've heard from our institutional members, our districts and our statewide members is that they like sitting shoulder to shoulder with suppliers. And it does become a partnership, and they're not just seen as vendors. They're not just trying to sell something. They actually really want to tackle problems that we see either with the way data is used or the way data is moved, that they do want to sit shoulder to shoulder to actually develop solutions that can address those issues. And so part of it is just like Brian said, the community, and like Carrie said, the community bring all of these different people together. And sometimes when you're in a district, you don't realize other districts are having the exact same problems. Like they're trying to make their ecosystem work for their teachers and students, and they're running into some of the same roadblocks. But when you are sitting there as part of the community, you magnify your voice with all of the other members that are experiencing some of the same things. IMS Global this past year released their Standards First initiative, and it's a commitment where our members signed a pledge, the Standards First pledge, that's their first go-to to resolve some of their interoperability issues and have a lot of transparency around their integrations. PowerSchool signed that pledge, Henry County signed that pledge, and it's a way of showing your commitment to open standards and to realize that it's a way to help develop solutions collaboratively that exist throughout the edtech industry. And I just want to say another thing too is reaching out to, it's just not a technical issue, it's also an instructional issue, as Carrie was talking about before, and helping people that are in the teaching and learning departments also understand that standards affect what they want to do in teaching and learning with students. It's not just solving technical problems, but it's also instructional issues that you're trying to address.
I think we kind of covered it a little bit, but I want to address specifically how edtech vendors in K-12 districts drive case standards and their use and adoption. This is emerging here, pretty fast moving. How can we help drive that use case and adoption, Tim?
For anyone who's listening to our conversation and they might not understand what case is, when we're talking about case standards, we're just talking about taking standards and making them machine readable so that anyone can use them and align their instructional resources to those standards. And I know that when I worked in a school district and we wanted to, and there was a change in our state with the way to our academic standards, and we wanted to utilize the greatest, latest new standards and have our instructional resources aligned to them, we would have to wait a really long time until finally whatever was in the PDF was changed and implemented within our digital platforms. But since case standards are machine readable, they can readily be realigned to new resources when standards change. Then they can also be utilized to measure competencies. So you can see exactly where students may be having challenges with certain resources and based on those standards alignments, and find ways to recommend new resources to them. So I think that part of that is just having an understanding about what case standards are. I think trying to encourage states to align their resources to case standards or to support case standards will make it make the edtech vendors and the curriculum publishers more likely to utilize them and align their resources to them. And so I think that that will help to drive the adoption, and then to purposefully use them within to align your assessment resources to those to the standards, but also have your instructional resources aligned to the standards. You can have that marriage among all of your different systems, so that you're able to utilize your instructional resources with purpose and have some data aligned resulting from that as well too, so you can see exactly what support students need and what supports teachers need in the instructional process.
Carrie, you want to pick up on that and talk about what we can do to help drive use and adoption with CASE?
Yeah, definitely. Learning standards are fundamental to education. They touch every aspect of a student's journey. And that's one of the reasons why I think the CASE specification in particular offers so much promise. Like once you solve those access problems, then it's all about connecting that ecosystem. And CASE is that kind of common thread that runs through all of our ed tech systems. So, the first step in that is the publishing piece. As Tim said, we've got to make sure all of the state and national standards are available in CASE format, and that they've got that machine readable GUID that we can use and we can align across our delivery platforms and our content platforms so that we can create those interactive, personalized experiences. And I think eventually, it's also really going to help with the data and reporting aspects. So there's the student progress, their personal progress, and being able to help them understand where they're at in their journey and how they can progress, and helping their parents and, those that are supporting them in their education understand that. But then there's also, helping the wider district and the state understand, what the education needs are at that more granular level, that, you really need those machine readable standards in order to put all of that together and paint that picture, and realize that full possibility for education.
Kimberly, can you help a vendor or a district with some words of wisdom of how they can get involved or how they can help drive these kind of standards? We talked earlier about your involvement with folks to help get them engaged. I mean, CASE is one example, but there's plenty of other examples as well here that we could apply.
I think some of our suppliers just really familiarizing themselves with the education arena, talking to our curriculum and instruction folks, getting them more involved, and just more of a listening ear of where we need to go is what's really truly needed. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit, because again, before it was about putting a canned product out there and you just buy it off the shelf, and now people are understanding that that's not K-12 anymore. We are really wanting to personalize and want things that are unique to our district and that are unique to our district needs. And so it's just for me, it's more about a listening ear and engaging and pushing in and talking to our curriculum and instruction departments across the nation is really truly what I think is needed, because this is more than about technology. And this is hard. I mean, it was a hard concept for me in the beginning, coming in, but it's something that we all kind of need to know. And I think both sides of the aisle really need to come together and understand what are those unique needs to the various districts across the nation.
I love that. This is the hard stuff. What we're trying to do now is the hard stuff, connecting these dots. Brian, is there anything you can add to that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, if it's about use and adoption, I think it really, as Tim pointed out, well, it's multifaceted, but I think as Tim pointed out, it starts at the state agency. If you're a district that's using state standards, and most districts do use their state standards. In Georgia, we found ourselves in a very fortunate position because our state agency, the Georgia Department of Education, has been forward leaning in this case conversation. Keith Osborne, who's now our CIO in his former role, was kind of at the table as this concept of a competency framework became a standard. And so Georgia was an early adopter, and Kim and I found ourselves beneficiaries of that. But then, as Kim pointed out, also getting your curriculum and instruction folks to the table to understand why, a standard encapsulated in a PDF document, and then transferred to a platform, sometimes truncated because the platform's fields weren't large enough to get the standard in verbatim, why that was a problem. And then our providers. And the provider conversation will get easier as this happens with all of these technical standards. As the use and adoption grows, these conversations get easier, but we have a great partner in our core instructional resource. We're really kind of a large consumer of their instructional products across our many grade levels. And when we moved into a contract, really talked with their technical leadership at the IMS event that was in Redmond, Washington. And really, I started with Tim, who's on the screen. So Tim, thank you for helping me get the conversation started, but really got the providers' leadership, technical leadership at the table. Lisa Matson, the COO of IMS, stepped in to help facilitate the conversation. Bruce Umstead, who's a strong leader in the case movement, had provided me the language that I wanted to place in what was a pretty thick technical appendix to that contract. And really, you have to navigate through, what sometimes feels like are complicated conversations, but once we got to the table, it wasn't complicated at all. And Tim and Bruce and Lisa and the IMS team just helped us have the conversation. Really my vendor partner was able to go back to her legal team and say, really, we want this in the contract. And when it became, contractual, we talk about commitment to use. That was my, really kind of living up to signing that pledge. That standards first pledge is really to kind of force these standards in. And with CASE, we did that. And now we're really benefiting in the ways that Carrie talked about, when it comes to data reporting on a student, the time on task on a standard for a particular resource, what resources are not being, our standards-based resources are not being used. All of that gives Kim and I powerful information and reporting opportunities with our learning and performance partners. So our counterparts in our curriculum and instruction side to be able to make more powerful decisions. So really, again, multifaceted, but I think it starts at the state agency, just making sure that either, that you have that adoption at that level really, I think helps rather than trying to create this for a district on their own. And then pulling in your curriculum and instruction partners, and then your provider partners.
I like that because it's like I said, it's just so valuable to make sure that everyone comes to the table and truly listens, and helping folks in curriculum and instruction understand the why. And then on that flip side, helping that supplier understand the why we need it a certain way from the curriculum side.
Yeah. And I think, from a vendor's perspective, we certainly do not want to be building a separate interface, connection, interoperability for every particular state or district or those. I mean, that's time, money, effort, just like it is for your folks who have to spend time, effort, and money to do something specific when it could be just a standardized approach. You get everything that comes along with that. We're on board with that for sure. Today, we've talked about where interoperability standards have come, where we've been. We've talked about how it impacts our staff and our students. We've talked about how it impacts digital equity goals. We've talked about how edtech vendors in K-12 districts can co-develop and work together for standards-based solutions. And we talked about case standards and standard use and adoption, because we think that that is going to be key in order to make sure that we're really taking advantage of this and saving everybody, including the vendors, the end user, time and money. Any final closing comments, Brian, that you'd like to make?
Well, really just to say how, express how much I appreciate these opportunities to share in this community. Kim and I grow from these conversations, and it creates really the opportunities for others to reach out and to help grow the community, because it's the community support that's gotten us where we are. So I just really appreciate PowerSchool and their eagerness to provide this opportunity for us today. So Carrie, thank you for reaching out while we were together last and in creating the opportunity. Tim on the screen, always such great support, and really the whole IMS organization. I mean, we know that IMS isn't just the folks that really get their paycheck from IMS. It's all of us, providers, districts, higher ed, all of us together. But we do really appreciate Tim's leadership. So, so to everybody on the screen, just thank you for the opportunity for further deep engagement in these conversations.
Great. Kimberly?
Same here. I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to grow, learn, and collaborate, because when we do this work together, we are pushing teaching and learning across our great nation. So I just appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Carrie?
One of the reasons why I've stayed in educational technology my entire career has been because everyone in this space is really passionate about solving problems for students and passionate about learning and education. And I just really appreciate that all of you came together to have this conversation, and that we have these forums to work together, that it's not just a vendor customer relationship, that we are able to build these partnerships and really work together to benefit students and advance all of the education goals that districts and states have. So thank you all so much for your time today.
Great. Tim?
I just wanted to give just to say a few words about how to get started. If you are a district listening to this and you're thinking, well, how do I even get started in doing this kind of work? It does keep getting easier. It is hard work, but it keeps getting easier because the integrations, it's almost like a blueprint that keeps getting developed around the use of the standards. I would say start out like Henry County did, really looking at your ecosystem, look and see what all of your major platforms are that you're using, your student information system, your learning management system, your assessment system, what publisher resources you're using, how are you providing single sign-on. Look at all of the resources that you have, see how they all fit together. And again, those standards are the glue that will help them work together, and also determine what do you want to do with your data? What are your goals? And how does interoperability fit within that big picture of what you want to accomplish? So IMS Global can help you with that and help you work with your partners. So please go ahead and reach out. We're happy to have you joined the IMS Global community. And so you can just reach out to us to find out more information about that, or reach out to PowerSchool and to other partners and find out more about how you can participate in IMS Global. That's one way that we grow, is that our partners and our members like PowerSchool actually bring their customers and their districts in, because as Ed was saying, that helps you as a company to solve the problems of integration within the district. So I'm very thankful to PowerSchool for being a great member and supporter of IMS Global, and for our members like Henry County Schools in the state of Georgia too, for their membership in IMS Global. So thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Tim. So I want to echo what Tim said about how you can get involved. And one of the things that I've found is that even the IMS Global website and the standards that are available to you is not the end of the line. There are subcommittees and work groups and other folks working within IMS Global, people who work in districts every day, people who work in companies every day, trying to solve for these solutions and trying to solve for it. So if there's something that you think is maybe not being addressed, get engaged, get involved, ask the question to IMS, ask the question to the companies. There is probably a working group, a committee, or somebody working on what you're struggling with, and you can certainly get involved and be a part of that and bring it forward. So I want to thank all the leaders here on the panel for your time and effort and what you've done for the community, as well as the time you spent on our session today. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a great day.